Hey folks, today we're covering Tinto Talks 52 for Project Caesar, aka Imperator Third Rome. And this week, Johan's going to be talking to us about the weather, Mother Nature, and some, random calamities that can affect your realm during your campaigns. And there's a lot of cool mechanics coming in this dev diary. So we're just going to get straight into it. The first thing we're going to cover here, you can finally stop asking in the subreddit. We are going to get the little ice age that happened during this time period. And as Johan says here, the widest definition of the little ice age encompassed almost the entire time span of the game. But what they've decided to do is go for the modern minimum, which happened between 1645 and 1715, which was the coldest phase of this period. And they're going to simulate the Little Ice Age with a situation that will affect the northern half of the northern hemisphere. So yes, this did happen, as he says, over this whole period, but they don't want it in the game for the entire time. So they're going to focus on a specific period to make it a little bit more interesting, I think, rather than it just being like really cold winters for the entire era of the game. You are going to have it in this small time period, but I'm sure there'll be some mods, things like that will expand this out if you do want it to be more historically accurate, I suppose. I actually like it this way. It makes it interesting for this time period, but it isn't affecting the whole game and ends up being something you just forget about. So during the Little Ice Age, food production in the affected area is lowered, and events and other mechanics are happening, which will make the experience a challenging mid to late game phase. So really something to spice the game up during this time period as you progress a little bit further into the game than at the start. And as you can see here, this is the Little Ice Age situation. The chill of the Little Ice Age tests the resilience of our people, forcing rulers to adapt or watch their realm descend into hardship. Whether through careful governance or sheer survival, history will remember how we faced this frozen trial. And there's going to be, as he says, events, things like that to help you combat this if you can. The next thing he's going to talk about is just the weather system in the game. So there's going to be a rather in-depth weather system where they will simulate storms and similar phenomena moving across the planet. They currently have two categories of weather system, the weather front and the cyclone. They've also included in this monsoons, which will have the particularity of going in one direction, Africa to India, from February to June, and the other direction, Himalayas to the Indian Ocean during October to December. And you can see again here, cyclone in Dundalk Bay, and this is a weather system. The cyclone currently is in this bay heading towards Kendal. The overall strength has decreased from its maximum and it is now classed as a Category 5 hurricane. It is currently affecting the current areas. You can see a whole list of Irish places that it has affected, and it can have the following effects depending on the terrain: wind damage, sandstorm. In addition, coastal areas are vulnerable to storm surge. So these are going to travel across the map. They're not just going to be static modifiers in one province or area. They're actually going to move across the map, affecting places as they do in real life. There'll be strong hurricanes in one place, and then they'll kind of peter off as they move through the lands. Think of how like the eastern seaboard of the US gets really powerful hurricanes in the south, and then as they carry up the coast, they generally, for the most part, weaken or go back into the ocean or something like that. So that is actually going to be played out in-game. So that is going to be cool. Again, mixing things up, a little bit of randomness happening during your campaigns. I do like this. This is way better than the current system where you just get like province modifiers that don't really affect you that much. And then as we saw in here, not all weather systems will spawn at the same strength. Their strength could change as they move across the map. The strength of weather systems directly impacts the benefits and the penalties they give to those locations. So not everything is bad from this, but for the most part, you're probably not wanting to be affected by them. Fronts are usually wide weather patterns that bring rains from the oceans into the lands. This will have some negative impacts on armies and navies, but will provide a large food production boost. And you can see that in this modifier here. The weather front has passed. Food production 24% better. That's really good. But then naval and army attrition is pretty bad if you've got them there. So when this is heading, you probably want to move your armies away as quick as you can and then have the benefits of the food production. Obviously, if you're in a war or something, you're not going to be able to move your armies, so this is going to be a problem. I wonder if there's going to be some kind of like meta thing of spotting a storm coming and then trying to goad another army to follow you into the course of it and seeing how badly it affects them. I'm sure you'll be able to do that. Hopefully it's not too cheesable, but I do like this system of actually being benefits and negatives. It's not all just negatives that are affecting you. Next, as he mentioned, there are going to be cyclones or hurricanes, as they are known in the Northern Hemisphere, and they are a much more narrow weather system, which causes a lot of damage due to the high wind speed. And you can see here in this screenshot, wind damage. This is a location modifier. And as you can see, this is all bad. Hurricanes just causing loads of damage. Raw material output's worse. Monthly prosperity worse. Maritime presence, because obviously your ships can't be out on the sea that much. Food production is worse. Naval attrition really bad. army attrition pretty bad, and the location here has been subjected to high winds. So, get out of here again as much as you can. Next, they're going to cover hurricanes in the desert. And what are they? They are sandstorms, just like the song goes. In deserts with cold, arid or arid climates. Now, the next sentence doesn't read very well. I can't make much sense of it, to be honest. I believe it's talking about like the fronts that we saw earlier, where you can get, better farming, better food production, but with some negatives. If you're in one of these arid climates, you'll instead get sandstorms, which are generally just bad. So they're not like the rainstorms, which can have some benefits. These are generally just bad because sandstorms, it's not good. Who likes sand? It is coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere, as somebody famously said. So you can see here the sandstorm raw materials output is bad, and then everything else, it's just a bad time having this happen. You just got sand everywhere, getting in all the places you don't want it to, and destroying your production and stuff like that. So I think that's what that sentence means. It's kind of like weirdly worded, but I think it means instead of having those rain fronts, because obviously it doesn't rain that often in deserts, you are instead going to get these sandstorms, as the song goes. But moving on from that, in any location with severe weather, when a front passes through, there will be snow instead of heavy rain. So you can see here, snowstorm, it is very bad. Movement costs nearly 40% worse. Raw material output, again, 40% worse. And food production bad. Naval and army attrition very bad from these as well. You don't want to be sticking around in these snowstorms. And then the next thing they're going to talk about is something a little bit different. It is volcanoes. There are locations which contain volcanoes that are not entirely dormant. At any point, any one of them can erupt, spewing out lava, ash, a big path of destruction in its wake, causing huge devastation to the locations they are present in. They will ruin RGOs, destroy buildings, kill a lot of people, and reduce prosperity dramatically. Afterwards, there is a small boost to food production due to the volcanic soil for a few decades. I mean, I guess you've got to take the pluses there from the negatives. It sounds like a lot of bad stuff, but at the end they're like, oh, there's a silver lining. You do get some good food production, so I guess that is true. Take that short-term badness, but long-term, for those few decades afterwards, it is going to be very good land. I guess the extra food production means you might recover your population there relatively quickly. Again, there is population in this game, so it is going to cause some problems for you, especially if you have it located in that area, kind of disproportionately to the rest of your empire. I'm sure there's going to be some places on the map where that would happen. Now, the last thing they're going to talk about is earthquakes. A large part of the world is prone to earthquakes. While we do have some famous historical earthquakes likely to happen, there is a small chance for any area to get an earthquake that can get one. Similar to volcanoes, it will destroy buildings and kill people, but earthquakes will usually not affect just a single location, but many adjacent ones as well. Sadly, there are some locations that are in an awkward position of being in an earthquake zone and having a volcano as well. And you can see here, Naples. I didn't know this about Naples, but I guess there's a volcano there. So volcano present, so that could happen. And it is also in an earthquake zone. So you could have both of these. What happens if you have both at the same time? That would be very crazy. But you're going to survive it. You're going to have a good time afterwards. You're Naples. You're going to be fine. And with that, that is going to be the end of the dev diary for this week. A nice quick one, but a lot of interesting information here. I really like how this system's looking. It is a good change from EU4, as we've seen with many of these systems. I really like all of this, especially like how the fronts work and how these travel across the map. Now, they didn't mention here if you're going to see it on the map. There is a map mode, it looks like. It wasn't talked about in the dev diary, but it was in the header of the dev diary. And I think that's how you'll see them. I'll put it on the map now, what they did have in the dev diary at the top. It looks like this is where you'll see areas affected by weather. It would be cool if there was some kind of graphic, especially for the hurricanes, kind of showing them traveling across the map. If you played Civilization, you see them on there kind of traveling around the map. But I'm sure like the winters will probably be shown. The graphics, I imagine, will get like snow effects, things like that you'll see a little bit more pronounced during the Ice Age. But it would be cool if you saw on the map, the hurricanes traveling around, things like that. It would be interesting. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of notification maybe saying a hurricane is approaching. And then at worst, you can look at the map mode and see where it is. But anyway, that is how it looks at the moment. Do let me know what you think in the comments down below. As I said, I think this looks great. Next week, Johan's going to be talking about something completely different. He's going to be talking about mercenaries and how they work in Project Caesar. I wonder what they're going to take from Crusader Kings 3 with this, because in there, you now have the mercenaries that just spawn on your location, and you can just use them, and then after 2 years, they leave. But then with the landless gameplay, they added these special mercenaries, which are like landless mercenary lords with their armies. And you can hire those, but then they have to travel to where you are before they can help you. I wonder if mercenaries are going to work that way. I think that is a much better system where you hire them and then they travel to you. They don't just instantly spawn where you are. So let me know again what you think about that. We'll find out next week, see what he has to say about it. But that's where we'll leave it for today. Hit that like button if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new here. I'm covering this game up to official announcement, launch and beyond. And I also cover Crusader Kings 3 in a very similar manner. But we'll leave it there and I'll see you all next time.